What is up, everybody? Today we'll be making an app using React Router DOM, and what we're going to be learning today is how to use actions, how to call an API with a loader and an action, so that way we can actually get data before the page loads. And the other thing we're going to learn is how to set up a browser router. So with React Router v6, there's a new thing called a browser router that is actually it's a new thing called create browser router. Browser router is not new, but create browser router. And what that allows you to do is set up these loaders where we can make the API calls and then load the page. So without further ado, let's get right into it. This is going to be some great stuff. So if we look here, we're in the index, and then we can go into the app file. And so what we have right here is what we see on the right side. We have an H1 and we have some nav items. So what we want to do is add another page, and it's going to be called the jokes page. So we have two pages here. And right now, neither one of them are showing. We're right now rendering the app. So what you can do with React Router v6 is you can go ahead and in the source file, create a new file called router.js. And then what that allows you to do is make a thing called a router, which this is a convention of using just the word router because it makes perfect sense. And it's the prop name we'll be using in a second. So we'll create browser router from React Router DOM. So, of course, first thing, it'll be in the description. You can npm React Router DOM. And then we can add in our paths array. So when you hover over this, you can see what it takes. It takes our routes. A route object looks like this. It takes in a path, and that path is what the URL is going to say when you're here. And then it takes an element, home. It also has more features, but we'll get into that. So now we have our home route. And, oh, we don't want the home. My bad. App. We want the app here. So now we have the app coming through in this router. But we're not using it yet. How do we use it? Well, it makes most sense to create the browser router at the very beginning of the app. So here, instead of putting app here, we're actually going to put our router in here, which will show the app. And then we're able to expand on our browser router. Okay? So if we go into the app, index, we can get rid of app, and we can write router provider from React Router DOM. So as you would expect, this provides a route. Then the next thing we need is router, and we are putting in our router. So the reason it's not showing up in my IntelliSense is because we have to export default router. Now, when I come back to the index file, I can go ahead and control space to open this up and import it. Then I can do /close. And now we have a router provider that has a router, which is right here, that's actually providing the app. So now on this /root place, so if I go like this, page is not found. And by the way, we'll look at this in the future too. We're able to handle route errors. So it's saying, hey developer, you can do something cool here if you want. So let's just go ahead and continue. So now the problem is I have our app, right? But I want the nav bar to be on all the pages, and then I want a home page and I want a page for jokes, because I want to be able to go to the jokes page and request jokes from an API. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's go ahead and make links to our different pages. So we'll say nav link, which is from React Router DOM. Instead of link, which you may have used in v5, nav link is the better way nowadays. And then we're going to say to, and we're going to say /. So this is going to be our home link right here. And then we can add another one, Alt-Shift down. And then we can put this as jokes. Okay. And we'll call this one jokes with an exclamation. Boom. Now we have these. But it's when I go to the jokes route, it's like, hey, that's not good. So I'm linking to it, but we haven't set that up yet. So to go ahead and fix that, we'll head to the router. And this is where things start to get really cool. So I'm going to space this out like this. We could add more pages just like this, right? That would work. But there's something cool that is going to happen. And it's that inside app, we have navbar, right? Well, what if we want the navbar to always be there, but then we want like the rest of the content to show up down here, but this will stay the same. So we're able to do that with this beautiful prop called children. So if we put children down, we can now put paths inside. Boom, home. Now I'm going to take a look at this here in a second. And we can add jokes. Boom. Path jokes. And this is inside the children. Now, the reason I took this off is because actually slash is the app, right? So we want the home page to also be slash. And so what that means is we can use this special prop called index. And we say true. And then we can import jokes. And so now we have something that's looking kind of like this. We got the path that goes to our app, and its children are home and jokes. Well, you know, still nothing's popping up here. That's because we need to be able to go into app and put something in there that will make these render out of it, which you'll see what that means. So when we control click into app, we'll see there's a space right underneath the nav bar. That's where I want the page to show up. I want it to be the wrapper, the nav bar, and then the page. So we'll use this component from React Router DOM called outlet. We'll close it. Woo! Look at that. The children are appearing in the outlet. And because we're on just slash, it's like, okay, we're on slash, so let's show them the index true element, home. Now we also have a path called jokes. So now we have two paths, and this is working, and the actual top bar is being rendered in the app at all times. Now you can still have more components, but we'll look at that another time. We also have an air element here, but we can also look at that at another time. So if I just do this and I just do slash whatever, we just get that, right? So we can actually use hooks from React Router DOM, which you can look at reactrouter.com, and get the air data. So there's a lot of really powerful stuff we can do with our routes to make our app very clean. So now that we have this set up, let's go ahead and head into the jokes. So I'm going to bring us back. Take us to jokes. So we have a hard-coded joke here. Setup, punchline, and a button called next joke. But right now the button doesn't do anything. So what I want to do is before this page loads, I want to hit an API that gets us a joke, and then we can just put it inside of this basically ready to go thing here. So how do we do that? Well, we have a folder and a file here called jokes route, and that's actually where we're going to do it. And the router is able to have things called loaders and actions. And so I'll show you that as well. So first thing we go to do is go into jokes route, and we're going to export const jokes loader, because this is going to be for the jokes route. And we'll go like that, and then we're going to hold down shift. Hold down shift, go up a few times, then hold alt and shift and go down a few times. And now we have duplicated this function, and now I can call this one action. And this should be async. Oops, what am I putting it there for? Async, boom. Okay, and now we need to rename this one to use jokes. Now I don't know what your experience of custom hooks are, but you can actually make some really useful ones that like you just use patterns and allow like, you know, to save so many lines of code. And that's what we're going to do and make it super clean and easy to read. So now we have our three functions that we're going to be using in the routes file. Now I'll head over to the router, and I'm going to go to the jokes route, which is through the app, and say loader equals jokes loader. And then we can add an action that's called jokes action. And we'll be able to take all of this stuff very far in the future. I'm excited, but I want to get these fundamentals down first. So that's what we're learning here today. So loader, action, boom, they're teed up. Now if we go back to the jokes route, now these functions are going to run on page load. And you see we're actually getting an error. It's because these loaders and actions have to return something. If they don't return something, then it's really mad at you. And when your code is happy, that means you're writing good code. So just like that, now it's working. Now I'm going to also do this on the action, but the action hasn't ran yet. So what an action is, huh? So when we click this link, first thing that happens, instantly jokes loader runs. Okay? Then we return from the jokes loader, and then the page renders, and we're on this page. Now, an action is when you're on the page and then you submit a form, not any kind of form, a React router form, or we use the use submit hook. That will be like, hey, I'm posting something, and then when you do that, the action will catch that and say, hey, and then return its thing. Okay? So now what we need to do is actually implement our jokes action and our use jokes. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually the hook. It'll be interesting. So there's a hook in React Router DOM called use loader data. So we'll say that loader data is equal to use loader data. Now, what this loader data hook is doing is it's saying, hey, okay, so this is the route and that we're on. So if we're on the jokes route, see, we're on jokes, we're routed here. Then when the page loads, we're going to run this loader. And then any component inside jokes has access to a hook called use loader data. See? And so this data is what the loader returns. So loader first, return value, received here with use loader data. Now there's more hooks to access other routes, actions, and stuff like that another day. For now, we're going to continue on with what we're doing and head back to this route. So we have our loader data, and we're going to use this hook inside. Instead of using loader data and action data, we're going to use this hook. It'll be interesting. So then we're going to say const action data equals use, guess what? Action data. Yep. You guessed it. Now what we want is to say we're going to return. So this is a stupid, dummy, simple hook, but it's useful when we expand things and make them a lot more complicated in the future. It's useful to have this paradigm. So what we're going to say is we're going to say if there's action data, we'll show the action data. But if there isn't action data, which, by the way, it's undefined at first because we haven't submitted a form yet, it'll use the loader data. Okay, so now that we have the use jokes hook, what we can do is we can create the jokes loader. Okay, now that we have our use jokes, we're able to now create our loader because we want to return the data we need for our page. Now if we take a look again at jokes, what we need a setup and a punchline. So there's this API that we're going to use, and I will grab it right here and paste it in here. It's officialjokeapi.appspot.com/randomjoke, and when we hit it, we get an object returned to us that has a setup and a punchline. All right, so that is what we're going to use. Now I'm using a little request function that just gets the data and parses it. So we're going to use that here to request the data. We can go into crazy request functions in the future as well. So we're going to say the response is going to be equal to await request from our utils, and then we're going to grab the API and put it in here, and now we'll have a response. So we can go to the end of this line and then console.log our res and see what we're getting, which, as you would expect, should be the exact same thing that we just saw here. So we're getting that res. Now, see, this has a punchline and a setup. So something I could do is say const punchline setup is from res, and then I could do something like this, or I could just write res here, or I could take this and deconstruct it here. All these amazing object things. Or I can just say data, or I can just do this, and it's because this is taking that and then returning an object, like it's beautiful. And then I can do this and I can just say data. And then what's going to happen is it's going to come into here, and then it's going to come into here. And then on the jokes page, I'm going to come here and say const setup punchline equals use jokes. So now it's getting all of that data. The moment that we get onto this page, it will load all of that data for us. So how do I kill DevTools? Where's the X? I don't actually ever use this browser. I'm a Chrome guy, but I don't mind it. Here. That works. Anyways, we'll go here and we'll grab the setup, and we'll put the setup in here. So now when we go to jokes, you'll see now if I refresh the page, the setup's changing. Now if I go to the punchline, because every time we refresh, it reloads the page, which makes the loader reload. So now we got this. But what we want is this to do the next joke. So what you could just do is submit, and it would work actually, because then it would rerun the loader. But I actually want to show you how the action works. So I'm going to do it a little different and also do the action. So I'm going to submit an action, and then the action is actually going to override the loader data, and that's what we're going to return. So let's create the function that we want. So we want to do const, and we're going to call it next joke. So we're creating a function, and what this function is going to do is going to use this hook submit equals use submit. Use submit is from React Router DOM. So this is going to submit something. So now to finish this function, we're going to say submit, and then right here it takes in an I'll get into it after I type it. And then we have method, which is not going to be get. It's going to be post. And then we can grab next joke and then add the on click. And then when we add this on click, we can put next joke in. And now, actually, what we can do is actually, I'm going to take this out for a second. And now when I click next joke, it actually works. Why? Because when we submit, it's actually recalling the loader. Because by default, it's method get. Method get actually recalls the loader. And then you're actually able to get from the request object the parameters of your get request. So we'll get into all of this stuff, but I want to show the action. So what we'll do is we'll do here, and then we'll say new, or we'll say type equals new joke. And this is just completely by me making it up. Like, you don't have to even put something here to make the app we're making, but this is to show you how you can pass data. So you could submit something up to your action and use it. And then we're going to say method as post. Now what's happening when I click next joke is it's still doing the same thing, but what's happening, post is actually calling this action, and then the jokes loader runs again. It's called revalidating. So every time you call an action, it will revalidate your loader unless you tell it not to. So I'm going to show this by doing a console log that says action. Then I'm going to do a console log called loader. And then I'm going to press F12. And you're going to see, first thing, if I refresh, loader. Then when I click next joke, it runs the action and then calls the loader again. So the loader is revalidating each time I click this button because it's submitting a post, which runs the action. Like I was saying, if I get rid of this, watch what happens to the URL. First of all, what happens to the URL, and also watch the action doesn't run. It just runs the loader. But now you see up here, our params are up there. So now it's only running the loader because the method is no longer posting. So post, put, and delete will go to the action. Get will go just into the URL. But I don't like things going to the URL, so I use actions. So this is what you'll see here. So now if I click new joke, it's still working. But now what I'm going to do is go to the router and actually turn off revalidation. So should revalidate. And actually this is weird, but it returns a function, because usually what you want to do is like calculate if the last path where you were and where you're going are different, then you want to rerun it. But if it's the same, then you don't actually want to rerun it. So next URL, and then we'll say not current URL dot path name is not equal to the next URL's path name. So that means if they're the same, it's going to be false. If they're different, it's going to be true. If they're the same, if it's the same path, don't revalidate. If it's coming from another path, revalidate. So this is a true or false based on those conditions. You can rewind that if you want to hear that again. And so what happens now when we click next joke, look what's running, only the action. But if I go home and come back, the loader runs again. See that? Home, back, loader runs. So now the action, I can click next joke over and over. It's only running the action, which is why I set up this hook like this. We're saying if we have action data, use it. Otherwise, use the loader data. So what we're going to do is actually the same thing as we did in here. We're going to say const, hit this endpoint, get us something that has a punchline and a setup, and then pass it in here. Now, it's only the action running, but the action data is actually what's coming in to use jokes. Use jokes is then using this. Now, this video has gotten long, so the last thing I want to show is how this how I can send this to the action and use that data. So if I go to the jokes route and come here, there will be a prop in here called request. Okay, and request is what we're requesting, or is like, you know, what we're sending in that body, that first thing of the submit, the first argument. And so it actually has something called form data, which I don't really like. So I actually convert it into an object. Otherwise, you have to do form data.get, form data.this, form data.that. And so I'll show you how you request.form data is a function you call that gets the form data, stores it in here. Okay, this is just something you kind of have to remember. You'll get it. And the other thing is we want to store the data. So form data, we're going to actually convert into a JavaScript object, and that's what data is. So we're going to call this res for response or result. And now we're going to say const data equals object from entries form data dot entries. So we're turning form data as entries, and then we're making an object from them. So it's kind of a crazy way to turn form data into an object, but we did it. And then we can say, let's make res like this a let, so that way we can actually put this in an if statement. And then we'll say res or res is fine actually. What am I saying? So then we'll say if res, data dot type equals new joke. So I'm just showing you how you can do this like kind of logic. That would work already, but I'm gonna go ahead and do this anyways. So this is kind of saying, hey, okay, so what's going on? So when I submit this, the type new joke, in the jokes route, I'm actually able to get the data from this form. I'm able to get the type, and I'm checking if it's equal to new joke. If it is, I'm going to return the response. Otherwise, this will be undefined. So, whew, we broke it. Request is not a function. Now, our problem is actually that this is called request, and this is called request, and this is called request. So I'm going to change this to as getter. Why not, right? Oh, yeah, since it's an export default. I don't have to do that. I can just say getter. And then we'll say getter done. It's working. So we're getting that data from jokes, submitting new joke, catching that joke from the form data, turning it into an object, and then we're saying from that object the type is it equal to new joke, then get the getter, and then get the good. Bam. And we're doing that without revalidating the loader, so the loader is not running again. So that is what I wanted to share. That's just the surface level. This is something that we can really grow on and build some massive apps, like incredibly big apps. There's so many different things we can do here, and this is the beginning. So I'm really excited getting those fundamentals in, and we'll continue this journey. Don't forget to go into the comments and let me know what you want to learn about. If I triggered anything about stuff you want to learn about, I'm on that first. I want to make sure that we create the most powerful impacts in the audience's life. Like, as a developer, I want you to just skyrocket. I've had a lot of opportunity, and so I'm really excited for you guys. I'm really excited for this channel, and let's keep it rolling. Peace.